Thank you for joining us, Ashley. And also just want to note to reporters, if you're able to enter any questions you have in the chat box now, since Ashley is our last speaker, we'll go ahead and queue up and organize those questions. So feel free to do that right at this moment. Ashley, thank you for joining us.
Hello, my name is Ashley. Like she said, I live in Victorville, California. I'm a mother of 3 and the daughter of Lot. He was transferred to the Adelanto ICE Detention Center in February. My father is a compassionate, understanding, he's kind, he's a great listener, he's a very positive person in my life. In the last few years of his life, he dedicated his time and love training service dogs for first responders and veterans while he was incarcerated. The ICE transfers have impacted my father's Lot's mental, emotional, and physical health. It has impacted his emotional health by taking away his anticipated freedom, causing him grief and loss of hope. It affects his mental health by causing anxiety because he remains without freedom and now fears being more at risk for COVID-19. And it has impacted his physical health. He suffers from many different health conditions, but the most detrimental is his asthma and his thyroid cancer. It's in remission, so he's still at risk and has a compromised immune system due to that. Almost 30 years ago, a mistake was made by 2 different men, one being my father. Both men served their time for their mistakes, and at this time, one man has been given the opportunity to move forward and a second chance at life. The other is still being detained and denied the opportunity and the chance of freedom. The only difference between these men is that one was born in California and the other near a refugee camp because his family fled the Khmer Rouge. No one chooses their birthplace, but my father should be able to choose to fight his immigration hearing free and home with his family, where he can be cared for and not stuck in a 6 by 9 foot cell for 23 hours a day due to lockdowns that are going on right now. That is why ICE transfers need to end. And we urge that Governor Newsom can please put a stop to this.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you for sharing your father's story, and we do hope that he comes home soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks. I see the questions coming in from reporters. Please keep them coming in. We're just going to show a few slides here to show you who has signed on to the letters that we're submitting today to Governor Newsom. So you'll see here, we have the list of anyone who's not speaking. If you could mute, that would be helpful. Anyone who's not speaking, if you could mute, please. So you'll see here in terms of the list of elected officials and state elected officials who are calling on Governor Newsom to stop ICE transfers. This is a list of assembly members and senators. Anyone speaking, if not speaking, if you could please mute. Here's a list of local elected officials. We have a list of about 18 elected officials who've signed on. I'm sure many more will sign on too. And this is a list of 108 community organizations who are urging Governor Newsom to stop ICE transfers. 108 organizations who are faith-based, immigrant rights, criminal justice reform organizations, and also labor organizations and public defender offices. Also joined us.
All right, guys, you're gonna stay here and watch me, I guess. So it's gonna take me a while to get away from this scene.
Whoever, I hear someone on background. If you're able to mute yourself, you're not.
Actually,
we also would like to urge everyone to call Governor Newsom right after this press conference to urge him to stop ICE transfers. And here is the script. I've also emailed the script out to everyone who's RSVP'd. Please. Oh, thank you. Oh, that sounded much better. So if you could please take this action today to call Governor Newsom to urge him to stop ICE transfers and to lift up this letter. and actually the several letters we're delivering from community-based organizations and state and local elected officials. We'd very much appreciate you taking action today. And finally, this leads us to the question and answer portion.
Hello, everyone.
If folks could, yes, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Rodney with the Immigrant Defense Project and supporting many coalitions in California and many organizations. And so I think what we'll do is we'll begin with the questions that have come into the chat box. And then we'll, if you could then raise your hand, or you can keep typing in the chat box, we'll figure it out. So our first question is about the Plata versus Newsom case from the Crispy at the Voices of San Quentin. There's apparently something happening at 3 p.m. and how can we watch that Zoom meeting? So does anyone here have information about that? I will give that over to our panelists for a moment.
I actually do have that information. I will share that via the chat box, that there is a conference happening right now, or not now, excuse me, later today at 3 o'clock with Judge Tiger in the Plata versus Newsom litigation, where Judge Tiger would like an update from the state of California about efforts to make things safer for people in San Quentin, and actually really encouraging our governor to decarcerate and release people because Judge Tiger is concerned that that is really the most effective way to keep people safe. And so that's happening today at 3 o'clock. And there is a Zoom link for that meeting that will happen with the judge at 3 o'clock. And I'll share that in the chat box.
Thank you. Our next question, and I'll just go through these in order, and I see that Tyke Hendricks' hand is raised. But our next question from Kim Bojorquez with the Sacramento Bee. Do you have numbers regarding how many people are being moved to ICE? Question, first part. Second question, what date was Charles Joseph released from the ICE detention center? Maybe Charles, if you could answer the first part of that, the second part of that first, and then turn it over to Angela and others.
I appreciate you, John. Yeah, I was released April 13th, 2020 from ICE, from Mesa Verde ICE Detention Center.
Thank you, Charles. And then Angela.
The number of people transferred to ICE from CDCR, it appears it's 575 individuals from January until May this year. CDCR, what they do is that 10 to 14 days prior to an individual's release from state prison, whether they're released on parole, released because they received a commutation, because they served their sentence, that's their release date. And about 10 to 14 days prior to that is when CDCR alerts ICE to start making arrangements for ICE to pick up that individual. CDCR then allows ICE, usually it's also an ICE contractor known as G4S, which actually does not have legal authority to do this, to allow them to enter state prison facilities to then conduct immigration arrests up to 5 days prior to that individual's release. And everyone that ICE wants, CDCR hands over, with the exception of Chantham Bun, who's the first person to our knowledge who was not handed over ICE, and that was as of last Friday. So just want to really, again, urge Governor Newsom to stop this practice that's continuing right now.
Thank you. Next question from Max Rivlin Nadler with KPBS. The first part of that, do we have an idea of the total number of transfers since the beginning of the pandemic? I think we may have just covered that. Do you believe any of these transfers violate SB 54? And if so, what could be the remedy? And what steps can corrections take to avoid ICE not just picking up people as they walk out of prison based on their public release date? So I'll turn that over to our speakers. Perhaps Angela, you may want to begin, and then obviously if other speakers want to add. But.
Got it. Yes, I did see a question here about exactly when people are the period of time for which people are turned over. I'll make sure to share that with all reporters. We are concerned that the CDCR is notifying ICE of release dates and arranging for ICE and ICE subcontractors to come into the various prisons to take custody of people, and are handing people over who are positive for COVID, as recently reported in the Desert Sun by Rebecca Pleasant, that is an ongoing practice, and people at Adelanto detention facility were found positive for COVID after being handed over.
Does anyone want to add anything? I'll pause for a moment. All right, and then next we'll, Assembly Member. please.
Yeah, part of the question is what steps can corrections take to avoid ICE not just picking people up as they walk out of the prison, and also about violating SB 54. I don't have a specific reason to believe that SB 54 is being violated, but there's obviously transfers that are not covered by SB 54, which we continue to participate in voluntarily. And I think the steps that corrections can take is to stop voluntarily participating in providing information around release dates, allowing access into the facilities. That would provide an opportunity for undocumented Californians to be able to be released safely to their communities and their families. What ICE does after that is up to them, but there is a role the state has been playing actively and affirmatively that has aided and abetted ICE's work, and we ought not and need not do that any longer, and that would go a long way to protecting health and keeping families together.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I'll pause for another few seconds. All right, so next, Taiki had raised her hand. So let me, I believe you have unmuted. Thank you, Taiki. So if you, I also see there's a question in the chat box, but I'll let you go ahead, and you may have more to ask as well.
Yeah, with regard to Chanton Bun, and I don't know if either of the lawmakers here or Angela Chan maybe has information about this, but my understanding from his lawyer was that ICE had been in touch with him before his release and said they were planning